Dishonored is an action stealth game released by Arcane Studios in 2012 to critical acclaim, earning multiple awards. It follows the journey of Corvo Attano, royal protector of Empress Jessamine Caldwin of Dunmore. The player navigates the city in search of Colwyn's kidnapped daughter Emily after the Empress is murdered by a group of unknown assassins. Whilst the story, gameplay and aesthetics have all been universally praised, this video essay will focus on the lore of the world of Dishonored and how the developers have created, intentionally or not, a politically charged conversation piece for its players. The game uses a provocative, political backdrop, highlighting the possible impact a video game could have on its audience. The lore of the game covers a number of real-world issues, including political corruption, class discrimination, and religious sectarianism. The inclusion of these problems creates an interesting question for scholars. Do developers address societal and political issues in their games for the enjoyment of the player, to flesh out the game world and provide greater immersion? Or are they hoping that players acknowledge these problems and increase their civic engagement? Do they want people to have conversations about these topics and for them to engage in more social activism? One of the most prominent scholars in this field is Soraya Murray. Her book on video games, The Visual Politics of Race, Gender and Space, is a culmination of many years of research from the assumptions that games are dominant forms of visual culture, filled with complex meanings that grapple with the most important questions of our times. In support of this thinking, Dishonored certainly grapples with some very important questions on classism in particular. This is best outlined in Level 5 of the game, titled Lady Boyle's Last Party. After arriving by boat to the destination, the player is greeted by a mansion boasting loud music and fireworks. This showcase of extravagance is starkly contrasted by the environment surrounding the mansion's gates. Guards patrol the area. The diseased weepers cough and groan in abandoned buildings. The streets lifeless. A great emphasis is put on the division between the classes by the game's developers. The poverty and disease ravaging the poorer citizens of Dunmore, as the rich and powerful host parties, drinking and laughing at their expense. With the setting of Dunmore taking heavy inspiration from Victorian England, the harrowing similarities between the game world and modern Britain become even more apparent. Todd refers to the dismissive nature of the wealthy towards the poor in her book, The People, The Rise and Fall of the Working Class, 1910 to 2010. She speaks on how Britain witnessed the fall of the working class as a political force during Thatcher's tenure as Prime Minister, highlighting a shift in reliance towards the wealthy to keep the country going. Many working class citizens in Britain would assert their importance in the success of the country, much like those in the world of Dishonored, who revolt against those in power that would exploit their labour for the precious whale oil that fuels the city. Another key example of the developers reflecting real-world issues in the game is its addressing of religious sectarianism. One of the most prominent examples of religious sectarianism in the real world is in Britain. Scotland has been troubled by its conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics for well over 100 years, and its history shares many similarities with the events of Dishonored. Davies notes that sectarianism was embedded in many aspects of communal life in Glasgow by 1914. This time frame in particular fits perfectly with the notion that Dishonored is based on the Victorian era. He states that the Protestant community, that made up around 75% of the city's population, held anti-Catholic and anti-Irish prejudices. Glasgow's Catholic population was overwhelmingly of Irish descent, which resulted in many years of conflict, both political and physical. These actions and behaviours have been translated into the world of Dishonored. The major religion in the game world is the Abbey of Everyman, led by the High Overseer. His political association with Empress Jessamine allowed his church to act as a civilian police force. Their main goal is to expel the city of followers of the Outsider, a cult-like religion that worships a mysterious being from another dimension known as the Void. The use of violence against the Outsider's followers had forced them into hiding, but there are still many that dedicate themselves to him, shown by the many shrines that are scattered throughout the game. This depiction of two major religions causing violence in a city mirrors the history of Glasgow. The Abbey are the Protestants, larger in numbers and settled, whereas the Outsider's followers are Catholics, as they are literally viewed as outsiders by the Protestants. Whether intentional or not, these are two major examples of political and societal issues influencing a video game. But does this affect the player? Studies into the effectiveness of video games in facilitating civic engagement have shown that there is a generally positive effect on engagement with the political issues covered in the game. This can range from conversations with peers to posting blogs on forums. Whilst it is evident that more research needs to be done in the longer term effects of politics in gaming, developers have the power to affect their audience. Thus far, this video essay has painted Dishonored as a vessel for the political agendas of its developers, but with a lack of explanation from Arcane Studios, we cannot determine whether this is true or simply coincidental. So, why else would the game be so rich with lore and history? An interesting characteristic of gaming is its immersive qualities. A well-made game is able to transport a player into its game world through its art style, characters, intuitive game mechanics, or, as mentioned before, its lore. Dishonored is no different. Each character has their own distinguishable features and voices, which provide the world with depth, as they all feel like real people. The art style also breathes life into the setting, creating a unique environment that is unlike any other. But why is this important? Wynne explains that games let us experience forms of agency we might not have discovered on our own. A game will set out different rules and obstacles for you to overcome, diverting you away from your recognized agency for a period of time. To immerse oneself in another world for a while can act as a form of expression or indeed enjoyment, no matter how sinister the circumstances are. Dishonored offers a form of agency that would appeal to many with its eclectic collection of powers and adrenaline-inducing stealth sequences, but it is the rich lore that provides it with an immersive game world for players. So is the political subtext of Dishonored simply a tool for world building, or is there an intention from the developer to increase civic engagement? Well, the game is universally loved. 9.2 out of 10 on IGN, 4.5 out of 5 on PC Mag, and 9 out of 10 on Xbox Era, plus multiple game awards. Whilst the influence of real-world politics has clearly affected the building of the world of Dishonored, the developers had clearly set out to create a complete game for its audience. The subtext allowed the game world to feel more organic for its players and created a meaning for Corvo's violence towards them. However, the beauty of art allows its observers to extract their own opinions from the subject. Some players may resonate with the themes that are covered in the game, some may dismiss them completely, but it is apparent that the developers have addressed very real issues of class discrimination and religious sectarianism within their game.